Channel 17, can you hear us? Thank you, sir. Hey, Joy, we can get started.
All right, everyone, welcome to our February 2025 TMAC meeting. We will start, as usual, with introductions. I am Joy McMurray, TMAC Chair. Hannah Soltel, Development Services.
Hey, Onshore, Public Works.
Warren Kiesler, Provo City Engineering. George Hanley, City Council, sorry. David Hurtado, TMAC.
Beth Province, TMAC.
Yeah.
Teresa McKay, Council. Dan Buscio, Administrative Services.
Bowden Golding, Development Services.
David Keller, TMAC.
Greg McFarland, TMAC.
You threw me off.
Stephen Brough, from Police Department.
Noah Gordon, TMAC.
Joseph Gandy, Provo Public Works.
Judy Johnson, Public Works.
Gordon Hay, Provo Public Works. David Dave, Provo Public Works.
Thank you. First action item, also as usual, approving our minutes from our January meeting. Anyone like to make a motion on that?
I move that we approve the minutes from the January meeting.
Second, all in favor? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we have two key agenda items today. Beth is going to introduce our micromobility discussion for us.
So first I want to say I know that this is not a policy-making body, but we are a recommendation body to the City Council. Micromobility is something that is fast-growing modes of transportation in our city. We have the e-scooters that have been around for quite a long time. We have e-bikes that are gaining more and more popularity. We have so many different types of micromobility that I really think a discussion on a couple of different aspects. One of them is like licensing, which I know, again, we are not a policy-making body, but what does that look for Provo City? Road construction, especially new construction, especially out on the west side when we're doing raw construction on roads, how does that play into the development of our city? So I really just wanted to open a discussion, and I know Dave has prepared some stuff, and I know the Provo Police Department has prepared some stuff on what does micromobility look like, what are the standards of it, and what are the breaking points? For me, it's like, what defines micromobility? So maybe that's the first question we should answer. What is micromobility?
Okay, thank you, Beth. So we have multiple mini presentations to help us with that conversation. I think we'll start with Sandy, if that is okay. And then, do you have? Yes. Okay. Wonderful. Right here. Okay. To give us an update on what's going on with our scooters, and then we'll go over to Officer Brett.
This is just a quick update that Bird Micromobility gave us. I actually shared this with the council and the administration. I thought you guys might be interested. Again, they are the ones that we have the contract with. So,
Ready?
hey, this is kind of a glance at 2024 with Bird. Kind of the CO2 saved, total rides, total miles traveled, our riders, and the one like 12.5 minutes. So I thought this was pretty interesting. I asked them to break it down for when BYU was in classes and during the summer. She went by an actual university date rather than BYU. I know BYU gets out in April, but I still thought it was kind of interesting to see if it is just the students or primarily the students that are using it, or if it's actually, residents, tourists, or what have you. And as you can see, we use it year round. So it's actually kind of, the first and last miles. So again, those are those numbers up there. This is, again, I've shown this heat map many, many times. This is for 2024, but it's very similar when I show the month heat map of kind of where they're riding. We have a little bit, you know, go down to the airport, but it's not just around campus. It's throughout Provo City. And then I asked her how many complaints they had received on scooters and the bikes. She had 53. The average was 2 hours to get the complaints taken care of, and most of them were either clutter or removal requests. These are ones that are, you know, left on a sidewalk for too long or left in front of somebody's house. So that's that number. I think it's pretty good, but that's an opinion. And then, again, this is just a quick presentation. This is just how to get in touch with Bert. I've tried to share this. It's on the new Provo City webpage. So people feel that, again, they can call or contact Bert, or you can do it with the app that most riders are using. That's all I have. It was, like I say, just a quick update that Kylie from Bert had sent. I thought maybe it would be of interest to this group.
I'm curious, does the city have a hotline for people to call about badly parked cars?
Yes.
Yeah.
How many calls do we get to that hotline in a year?
For badly parked cars?
Yeah.
We get about 100 and something a month. So, yeah.
We're running about 5% of complaints about scooters relative to complaints about cars, which seems fine to me.
And remember, with cars, too, we're actively patrolling all the time.
That's right.
These are just the ones, the calls that are coming into 311s are the ones that we're missing.
That's right.
You know, to kind of comparison.
I would counter that just a little bit, that I think that for a lot of people, it's probably harder to call about a scooter than it is to call the city about a car. I mean, I think with a badly parked car, you generally would know who to call, and if it's blocking your driveway, you're going to call. When I ride the river trail and there's a bird bike halfway onto the trail, I just go around it, or, you know, I don't call them. It seems like there's a little bit of a higher barrier to contacting Bert about a problem. Anyway, that's my only thought about that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Any questions, comments, TMAC members? And could you go forward one more?
Can you hold that for just a minute?
Sure.
My only other feedback on this is CO2 saved. That formulation, I mean, that's assuming that they rode the bird instead of what vehicle?
Or any vehicle, right? When the average trip length is 1.5 miles, it may have been replacing a walk trip.
Yeah, which doesn't save any CO2, maybe a little methane.
Depending on what you ate.
But their argument is that because it's 1.5 miles average distance, that it's providing that last mile service that.
I mean, tracks, you know what I mean? Those types of things. Students, rather than taking a car up to campus, they're jumping on a scooter and driving from their apartment. That's what they're basing that on.
Yeah.
My conclusion isn't to say that it doesn't have an environmental benefit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know how many are doing this because they know they can, as opposed to driving the whole way, so they can calculate.
There's also the whole problem that when the scooter is available, they may have chosen a different destination, right? Like maybe they took a 1.2 mile trip to a place that had limited parking instead of a 5 mile trip to a place that has good parking, right? So it's really hard to know.
I think that's one of the things that really shows, though, is that micromobility is very, very present in our city. And if you've got, even without the university students here, you've got almost 3,000 users. It's something that affects all of the traffic in the entire city, whether you're walking, biking, driving.
I think that's my take-home message too, that is looking at the heat map. Like, it is really truly used all throughout Provo. And then looking at the, sorry, back one more time, and then, the 21% of the year, just a quick calculation, represents 30% of the rides, right? So it's being used by non-students as well. Like, it's truly serving, it's a mode of transportation that's being utilized throughout the city by a variety of users. But the problem is that it's this new technology that no one's quite sure where do we put it, you know, where does it go? So
How are we interacting safely?
how do we make a safe plan for accommodating this, for this desired, demonstrated need? Hey,
Can I just
yeah,
ask something
Sandy, go
else?
ahead.
And I think that the ridership would be higher, and this isn't anything to do with the city, if the Brigham Young University campus would allow them actually on campus. I think that does limit the ridership because they can only get so close.
Which has a dampening effect. Yeah, definitely.
Does UVU allow them on campus?
What?
Does UVU?
I believe they allow, I've asked this so many times, I believe they allow the bikes, but not the scooters. Where Brigham Young University is the only one that bans all of it from BIRD. I mean, I think private e-bikes and everything can get on campus, but they just don't allow BIRD.
What a lot of universities have done across the country is they've allowed the scooters on campus, but have geofenced parking areas.
Yes.
Right, so you can use the scooters to get to a parking space where you could leave it. BYU is concerned that they'll have scooters everywhere, but there are technological solutions to that BYU hasn't allowed.
I really, really appreciate this presentation. It shows definitely that we've got users, but I'm wondering, this is for BIRD, the rented scooters, so I'm wondering kind of what the ratio is to privately owned scooters, which I know it's heading up, so, I know you don't know that.
No,
so I'm just-
no. Conversation. Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting conversation.
Yeah.
As far as that number, as far as the lesser number of parking complaints with scooters, I would be interested to see the number of complaints versus the total number of scooters versus the number of complaints that come to parking versus the total number of cars being parked. Because it's a huge, there's just a lot more cars. So I don't know if it's that number that compares.
Yeah. You absolutely hit it right on the head. This is new technology that's making it a little bit different. So, late last year, probably around August, the police department administration and then, Provo City Legal, came together and they provided all the officers these nifty little cards, to kind of help us navigate some of the different laws and what kind of applies to all these different micromobility devices. So, working through this chart here, we go through the e-scooters. So it's got to be limited under 2,000 watts, 20 mile an hour maximum. And then it goes through and it gives us the allowed and where they're not allowed, and then some of the restrictions. So one of the things we look at is 10 mile an hour on any residential street or sidewalk. There's not a speed limit on the roadways, like they're using the same as like on a pedal bicycle or an electric assisted bicycle. So 10 miles an hour if they're riding on a sidewalk. The river trail is a 15 mile an hour road area. Helmets are obviously supported. They're not allowed on parked turf, walking trails, or restricted sidewalks. It follows very similar rules to the pedal bike and the electric assisted bicycles. So same exact thing with bicycles, 15 miles an hour max speed on the river trail, 10 mile an hour on the sidewalks, restricted to the far right-hand side of the road, 2 abreast. Not allowed on parked turf or the walking trails there. Electric assisted bicycles, they fall into a little bit different. They have a few different restrictions on them, especially when it comes to children or younger people. So under 16, they've got to be directly supervised if they're applying or using the electric assisted feature. And 14 years or old, 14 and under 14 are not allowed to use bicycles based on Utah code that are engaging that electric assisted feature. So same exact thing. All three of those kind of apply. This downtown mall is kind of that, restricted area. So from 5th West to, 2nd East on Center Street, and then 1st North to 1st South on the avenue. It's kind of only pedestrian traffic, only foot traffic on the sidewalks is the way the Provo City Code is written for that. Getting into a little bit more of the newer technology that we're really struggling with lately. We go into those e-bikes, the Surons are kind of the new things that we're pushing really hard. These are getting very popular over the last year, which is part of the reason the police department pushed out this cheat sheet for us, is because they are getting so popular. So the e-dirt bike.
It's easy to distinguish between the e-bike?
Yeah, because there's one that's assisted, right? The e-bike is assisted, obviously, and then the e-bike has no pedals and stuff like that. Now, there are some that are starting to push the boundary. They have pedals on them, even though they're 100% electric motored motorcycles, essentially. So these are, when we go to the e-bikes, not the e-bikes, but the e-dirt bikes, they're subject to the same exact laws as any other vehicle, registration, insurance, off-road registration, if they're going to have that, licensed drivers, or a safety standard, the off-road safety license they're required to have. They're not allowed on sidewalks, walk trail, river trail, anything like that. And then if they're on the roadway, they've got to obey every law that a vehicle would also have to abide by.
They're basically motorcycles.
They are 100% motorcycles.
Yeah.
So, but because it's a new technology, the electronic, they don't have a horsepower rating or a CC rating. The way that they're not sold as motorcycles, they're sold as electric assisted bicycles. So people think that they can ride them out on the roadways and stuff like that, whereas it's not good. So, golf carts are a big one that we see here in Provo as well. State code is very specific on golf carts unless it's approved by the administration. For the municipality, they're not allowed on the city streets, sidewalks, anything like that. As far as I'm aware, I don't believe Provo City's issued any type of permit or authorization to use golf carts out on city roads or sidewalks or anything like that. So, you guys have any questions about that stuff?
Yeah, there are a lot
Sergeant
here.
Rupp.
Go ahead.
The top one with scooters, I was on State Street the other day, so scooters have to be either in the bike lane or on the shoulder, they cannot be in the travel lane.
Correct.
I had one pass me on
Yeah,
State Street.
they're really fast.
I wasn't driving that slow. Okay.
They're getting incredibly fast.
And bicycles can be in the lane. Scooters cannot be. That's the difference between bicycles.
Yeah, again, this is one of those things that it's kind of that gray area, right? Like what's allowed, because the scooter hasn't been kept up in the same way as the bicycle, saying yes or no. So the way we understand it is that the scooter can be in that far right-hand side or in a designated bike lane as well.
How many, do you have a lot of citations for sidewalk riding that's over 10 miles an hour? Have you had?
The big one that we tend to enforce, is the failure to yield to a pedestrian on the sidewalk. So any of these micromobility devices, if there's a pedestrian or if they're approaching a pedestrian, when I say pedestrian, I mean somebody that's walking, they're required to yield to that pedestrian. They got to move off the sidewalk or move off to the grass or something like that, not obstruct the pedestrian. I don't know as far as the citation standard goes. Obviously, all officers have their own discretion to educate, warn, or cite. So I don't have statistics for number of citations issued for sidewalk law.
Yeah, that's been a big worry of mine because, there are a lot of parents are sending their kids on these micromobility things to schools, and then, they sort of think, well, put them on the sidewalk where it's safer, but then they're going at very unsafe speeds on the sidewalk where cars are coming out of driveways, and that ends up being more dangerous than the parents may realize. Do we have any data on helmet problems, like injuries that have resulted from not wearing helmets? I'm just curious why.
We can pull up traffic accident statistics and stuff like that as far as vehicles, but that would be more of a medical analysis through our paramedics team, as far as the number of accidents or maybe through the hospital.
Jeff Glenn in public health has done some.
I do have a question about like the scooters. We have a couple that go up and down Geneva all the time, and they stay on the right side of the road, but there's no bike lane, there's no shoulder along Geneva. When they're going up and down Geneva, do they have to yield for cars coming in, or they have the right of way along Geneva? Because I'm sorry, I've seen several of them almost get creamed by cars because they're going faster than the traffic on Geneva on the right side of them, and they're blowing past the ingress and egress to neighborhoods, and the cars don't see them until the last minute, and they
Are we talking like electric scooters?
Yes.
Or bicycles or
well, electric scooters or e-assist bicycles?
So if a scooter is out on the roadway, or a bicycle or any type of micromobility is out on the side of the road or anything like that, they have the right of way on a through road, right? So if I'm understanding the question right, you're going down Geneva Road and they're on the far right-hand side of the road, then yes, traffic has to yield to that scooter or that micromobility device when they're coming out onto out of a neighborhood.
Do they have to stop at the stop signs? I see them not stopping, and that is dangerous.
Yeah.
So this is actually one that this is one that actually just came up to, and we talked about just barely. They are not required
Yes, I
to
thought.
stop at
Right?
stop signs. Now, that law specifically says bicycles. Again, this is a time where the legislation probably hasn't caught up with the popularity of the e-scooters because it's not actually stated in the law, micromobility device. It says a cyclist is not required to
Correct me
stop.
if I'm wrong. I think the law is that if a cycle is approaching an intersection and a car is coming at cross traffic, they do have to stop. There's no car approaching crosswise and they can treat it like a
Yeah,
yield.
it simply says, they can treat it as a yield. So if it's safe, the way the law reads is if it's safe to do so, the bike doesn't have to stop.
I've seen a lot of almost accidents.
The other, just going back to your question, don't leave gaps. You think you're being polite by leaving a gap for somebody to turn in front of you? You create a very dangerous situation for everybody. Don't leave gaps. If you're on a road and there's a car here waiting to turn left into a driveway, your instinct is to allow them space to turn in front of you. But you may not be seeing the cyclist or the scooter that's coming up on your right side behind you, which this person also cannot see. So just move forward. They can wait until the traffic queue has cleared. Don't leave gaps in traffic.
By doing that, you're creating a site
You're creating a site obstruction for the cyclist and the car. I've had a friend killed that way.
I've had issues with that too, even on my motor scooters.
Yeah.
Where, again, people, just like you described, I was actually hit University Avenue because he was trying to turn out of a side street and traffic on University left a gap, but I had a free to what has been changed, the off ramp from University onto Canyon Road. I had a free path to there, and unfortunately the street next to the bank was someone's trying to get out of there, and they let her through, and I couldn't believe she didn't see me. I was like, watched her hit me, but you're doing one person a favor, but creating a very hazardous situation for someone else.
What kind of volume of issues are you seeing with these things, both complaints that are reported to you or violations that you're seeing?
Especially come probably in the next month or two, we're going to see we're going to see an increase in complaints, especially on the river trail. So the river trail tends to be a hot button item for us come warmer weather. As people start going out and recreating more on the river trail, they're going to start complaining about the speed and stuff like that.
The speed of e-bikes and scooters.
E-bikes, pedal bikes, scooters, things like that. So there's some sections of the river trail where people feel it's okay to ride their bikes at 30, 40 miles an hour. So,
By the same token, there are places on the trail where families are letting their kids free range back and forth around the trail and, pets and things like that, where if you're riding a bicycle at a regular bicycling speed, it creates a hazard for you to navigate that.
just like Vern was saying, these e-scooters, I know I've got one officer, his e-scooter will do upwards of 50, 60 miles an hour. They're incredibly fast, yeah.
So is there a speed limit in bike lanes?
No, just the roadway speed limit. So they have to abide, if you're on the bike lane, or if you're in the bike lane, you have to abide by the same traffic laws, right? Stop
There's
lights.
no speed limit, because like you said, you're
25 like the
It's-
street.
Yeah,
Okay,
so if you're going down the avenue, then it's 35. If you're on, 500 West, 35. If you're on a residential road, it's 25. It's the same as, it's the same as the speed limit on the
same
roadway.
for the cars.
Yes, correct.
There are also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
As long as you're on the roadway. If you're on the sidewalk, 10 miles an hour.
There are also speed limits on the micromobility. In order for the vehicle to be allowed, it has to have restrictions. So those e-scooters that go 50, can't go 50 on it. Or it's not legal to be an e-scooter. You can't ride it without registration and license and so forth.
A lot of them are gonna be those off-road ones that tend to be off-road, and they just,
I wonder if the county will ever consider redesigning the Provo River Trail. I mean, it's a big project, but it's poorly marked. People don't actually follow the rules, so there's designated, at least in certain parts of the trail, designated side for bikers and for pedestrians. And it's everybody's use. It's pedestrians, recreational bicyclists, and then lots of these e-scooters and e-bikes. And so it's really dangerous when people are walking in the bike lane or biking in the walk lane, and then you're coming at each other at different speeds. It's kind of crazy.
the Provo City area of the Provo River Trail, 52 or 5800 north down. I know Parks and Recs might have more input. But I know they've went out over the last year and they put speed limit signs, 20 mile an hour speed limit signs, especially in the Provo City area.
There are signs prohibiting motor vehicles on the trail.
Is this card available to the public? Would you make it available to the public?
We can send this out. It's not anything top secret.
Want us to email it out, Greg?
Well, I'm wondering, can we attach it to everyone who buys something for Dave's shop, or?
The social media channels that the city has access to, this is a really great
I believe this
summary
has been
chart.
out on the, I believe we put this on the Provo City website. Yeah.
Students,
Well, and, when we do, say, for instance, school training in schools.
Yeah, it's been a little while. It'll probably come back out.
That's a good idea.
and then, and I don't know if we can change the wording without, but helmets strongly. I mean, I just freak out when I see how fast some people are going without a helmet.
Well, you also attach it to a card that says, wear a helmet.
Yeah. Don't be dumb, wear a helmet. Yeah.
Can you send it out in the newsletter? Maybe it's like a.
Well, social shaming might do the trick.
Hold on to keep.
For all that,
I can ask Janelle to put it out and distribute it on the city's website or anything like that.
Nicole's doing that for a recycling thing that we're doing. People have
Idea
something
loud.
on their fridge. She might have the same kind of idea.
Especially if we're getting into spring and everyone's gonna be out on their.
Absolutely. I can ask our PIO or our president.
Perfect, yeah, there's a couple more.
This is really, really helpful chart.
Oh, that
That's why they're not legal, the city street.
I had another quick question for you. So, and I know I'm focused over on the west side on Geneva, where we really don't have a lot of bike lanes out there, and especially Geneva. I always get very nervous when there's bicyclists on Geneva because there's nowhere for them to go, honestly. So if you have an e-scooter or you have an e-bike or you have these electronically assisted on Geneva Road, they have to stay on the right side, but do they have to follow the flow of traffic? So they can go, even if Geneva's I'm sorry, I saw his head shake, no. So if Geneva traffic is stopped and there's no bike lane and they're not allowed on the sidewalk, they can still go on the right side of the cars and go forward.
Correct.
But they are allowed on the sidewalk, right?
Yeah. They're
It
allowed
looks
under
like
speed.
scooters and e-bikes can choose road or sidewalk based on this chart.
Yeah, they can go on the sidewalk, they just need to be under that 10-mile-an-hour speed limit. Or if they're on the side, or right-hand side of the road, they can pass.
They can still pass all the cars.
I think it's also important to note something that goes in your comment, like, if there's a road and the shoulder is narrow or obstructed, or there's no bike lane or whatever, a bicycle can take the full lane.
Yeah.
And cars just have to be slow behind it. Like, that's something that, like, people get really offended by, a bicycle being in the lane, but that's actually, they're allowed to do that everywhere except in your state.
I have been stuck behind a scooter going 20 down Geneva before.
It's okay.
It is okay, but that's what I'm saying. Well, because we're talking about dangerous situations, and so when they're on the right side, blowing past all the cars, and there's cars trying to get into the flow of traffic, to me, it's the e-bike that's creating the dangerous situation and not looking out for the cars that are actually trying to move along the road. Because they're now going twice as fast as the car.
Okay, thank you for that great information. Dave, what would you like to add to this?
So I have a couple of comments. The first is that I think one of the biggest problems with these different types of vehicles is that we don't really have the right names. And so when we say scooter, we could be talking about any type of wheeled conveyance that a person uses from birth to death. There is a scooter. Or there's a vehicle we call a scooter. and so, you know, when I named my store the Scooter Lounge, which I thought was a really cool idea until I realized I was going to get hit up for booking bands and bar supplies, as well as people search my website and they're looking for the e-scooters, which I don't sell. And what I do sell more and more is increasingly being referred to by the term moped, which we don't care for that term. But when we talk about the definitions of the different vehicles, it's important to know that we're talking about the same thing. So, like when I say scooter, I'm talking about a motorcycle essentially, but a little smaller and maybe have to step through frame like a Vespa. A lot of people know what a Vespa is. When someone says moped, they may be talking about what I sell, but the legal definition of moped is actually very clear in the state code, and it has to have pedals. The name moped comes from mo and ped, motor and pedals. So technically a moped can't be over 50 cc's, it can't have more than 2 horsepower, it can't go over 20 miles per hour, and it has pedals. A moped is what, e-bikes are what mopeds always wanted to be when they grew up. But again, e-bike has also, the definition has been muddied. And so when we say e-bike, are we talking about a Sur-Ron, which is an electric dirt bike by any definition, doesn't have pedals, or are we talking about an electric assisted bicycle? And then when we drill down into electric bicycles, there's 3 different classes that are recognized by the federal government, and Utah is one of the states that adopted that definition. So there are specific limitations on what a legal e-bike is. And if it exceeds those in terms of motor size, top speed, if it doesn't have pedals, then it's not an e-bike. So all of these things, it's the definitions, I think, they get us into trouble, because there are a lot of vehicles that are not, they don't meet the legal definition for what they're purported to be, and they really can't be used under the circumstances they're being used in. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff in the state code that goes into the specific legal definitions. Like, for example, the e-scooter motor assist, the vehicle on the top left there, it's 2,000 watts, 20 miles per hour. There was a company selling a scooter they called Dumber scooters at the Provo Farmers Market. They named them after the Dumb and Dumber movie. That does meet the legal definition, except for one aspect, which is that it's supposed to be able to be propelled by human power alone. And the thing weighs like 200 pounds. You'll never see anybody sitting on one of those and doing this with their feet to make it go down the road, right? That's absurd. But that's how they were selling that, as a motor-assisted e-scooter. So it's all really complicated. I don't know if I have time to, or if anyone has any particular questions for me about it. But it is. I'm happy to see that the e-dirt bikes are being enforced, because I think one of the more dangerous ones that I see because they go really fast. And kids were riding them underage, and they're riding them in the parks and in the streets and doing wheelies. I have a picture of a 3-year-old girl who had her scalp stapled back up after someone ran her over in the park on one. Sorry?
There's a two of them.
2 of them? Oh, wow, yeah. I was just at 2 weeks ago, I was at a trade show in Las Vegas for this industry, and I talked to a company that sells the stand-up electric scooters, and it's a brand that we had looked at. And he said, why are you selling these? Why don't you sell our dirt bike? And I said, well, I'm concerned about the legalities of that where I live, and I don't want to sell a vehicle to somebody who's going to get hurt or break the law to use it. And he said, well, the thing is the mopeds, which when he said moped, he was talking about what I sell. He said the mopeds have already been eclipsed by these dirt bikes. He said this year alone, between 3 brands, Segway, Sur-Ron, and this brand, NIU, he was a rep from NIU I was talking to, he said between our 3 brands, we've sold 100,000 of these in the U.S. And that's bigger than the entire U.S. market for what I sell. And so to me, that's an area of concern because they are catching up and they're making them equipped with a VIN number and the necessary equipment to be registered and street legal, but most of the ones we're seeing out there are not. And even if they were, you'd still have to have a license, you still need to be 16. And so there's a lot of violations in that department as well.
Steve, what would you like to see Provo do to help address some of these very serious safety concerns?
That's a good question.
If you had a wish list, like, do you have ideas on that?
I think just publicizing like this, if this gets out there, then that's a big step. I have seen a reduction in those type of bikes on the road. I don't know if it's because of the weather or if it's because of enforcement or, word getting out. But if you're not sure what any of these vehicles are, just come to my house across from Timpview Drive at 3 o'clock and you'll see all of them. You'll see all of these and then some.
All of the above.
Yeah. And in all kinds of ways, 12, 14-year-olds on a golf cart. I did see someone pulled over on a bicycle, and it was just a regular pedal bicycle, but he ran the stop sign, which is legal, I guess. But there were pedestrians in the intersection right in front. I was stopped at the stop sign letting the pedestrians cross, and the bike blew through and, brushed one of the pedestrians. And he did get pulled over right away, so, yeah.
I think getting this out is helpful. I was on a walk the other day at one of our city parks, and there were some dirt bikes there zooming around on the grass, and I thought, that's probably going to rip up our grass for a very long time. And but I didn't know, I didn't know what to do in that situation. Do I try to hail, the 12-year-olds and say stop, or to not get hit, or do I call the police without, I'd like to warn them first and say, but I wasn't confident in saying, this is for sure illegal, because I just didn't know. I hadn't seen this chart.
The kids probably don't know that, the parents don't know that.
Yeah, so I think first step is information, right? And then as a community, we can say, let's call in when things aren't safe, or talk to them, ideally.
So along with this, the police have a definition of what is a restricted and non-restricted sidewalk, but that may not be clear.
Right. I was that was my first question, what's the difference?
So it might be good to include a map of restricted sidewalks or some kind of definition of what they are when you send this out. Because it's not most sidewalks in the city.
Yeah, honestly, the only sidewalk I can think of is that Center Street.
Yeah, that's what
Downtown.
and I don't know, I'm sure Dave knows, the under 16 can operate the Class 3 EAV. What is that?
Electric assisted bike, Class 3 means that it can reach 28 miles per hour while pedaling, but you have to be pedaling to go that fast. Class 2 can reach 20 miles per hour with a throttle. You don't have to pedal. And Class 1 can reach 20 as pedal assist only, so you have to be pedaling to go that fast. But most bikes now are hybrid, so they'll have a throttle that can go to 20, and they can reach 28 if you're pedaling.
So why aren't more sidewalks restricted for e-bikes?
No, you're great.
The issue is the speed, right? I mean, if you are going at a reasonable speed on a sidewalk under 10 miles an hour, I mean, 10's actually pretty fast on a sidewalk.
You can hurt somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I would have preferred 5, but I think 10 It's also a little, tricky to enforce those kinds of things. But, yeah, I mean, if you're cruising along at a slow pace, I mean, I was so worried when I started riding an e-bike like 6 years ago. So when it was really early, and I was really worried that BYU was going to not let them onto campus, because there were a couple of students who were like flying around the campus just to show it off, and it was really nerve-wracking. So, if you're safe, you have the pedal assist speed on your bike. You can say, I can't go faster than 5 or 10 miles an hour if I just slow it down. So on campus, when I come onto campus, I'm riding 5 to 7 miles an hour through the campus, and I'm going super slow, and there's no danger to anybody because I can see everybody, everyone can see me. But that's the problem, is that people don't have that sense of this is an appropriate place to speed it up. Because I'm actually safer on my e-bike when I'm going 20 miles an hour on most of our side streets by just being almost in the lane with the cars, or at least, off to the side, because I'm sort of seen, I'm more visible, I'm more treated like a vehicle than if I'm, anyway. I think you just have to get a sense of how you're a weird hybrid with an e-bike, and if you're going to do something on a sidewalk, you have to be very, very careful. Anyway, I don't know if that's...
I feel like laws aren't going to change this. The laws are in place somewhat, because no one's obeying them. We don't have the resources to be enforced at that level, right? There's no, because it's everywhere, right? It's on the river walk, it's on the sidewalks, it's on the side streets, city parks, that are parks, it's on every sidewalk. It's like, beyond. So let's like do like a major crackdown for like a month and like got.
Yeah, well, we've done things like that before, so.
I have a slightly different, but I don't look at what's happening and like, wow, we're in the wild west of lawlessness and people zipping everywhere. Like, there's some bad actors, but they're terrible drivers all over Provo, right? Like, you can't ban scooters and e-bikes from sidewalks because there's an 11-year-old who rides to school on a sidewalk, right? Like, the bicyclists are usually safer in the road, but there's some cyclists who would not be safe in the road. And so those cyclists are probably not going to go really fast, and we allow them to use sidewalks, right? As kids grow up, they need to learn that, okay, and now I need to stop riding on the sidewalk and start riding in the road. And when I do that, I need to learn how to signal, I need to learn how to make myself seen, I need to do all these other things, right? But the real problem is that we have two pieces of transportation infrastructure. We have sidewalks, which are meant for walking, and roads, which by and large are meant for driving. And the problem is that that describes two modes of transportation, and there are 15. And so until we build more multi-use paths, until we build more separated bike lanes, until we build better infrastructure for these middles, we're just going to have to deal with the fact that sometimes they're on the road and sometimes they're on the sidewalk. And there's safe ways to do both of those things. And when we have bad actors, we should prosecute them or cite them or whatever. But I don't look at the world around me and think, wow, what a terrible thing that needs to change instantly.
We're dealing with a lot of young children
Sure.
going at speeds they've never gone before. So that's the thing.
Yeah, and that's the other problem.
Horrific
too.
accidents and really close accidents like that. And someone's going to die.
And you shouldn't buy a 10-year-old an e-dirt bike.
Yeah.
But it's happening every day.
It does make you wonder what parents are thinking. I mean, when you see, but I wonder if, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a matter, I feel like even the e-dirt bike, I've seen better compliance with that lately. I don't know if you were describing that, but I felt like when they first showed up, in my neighborhood, there were kids doing all these crazy things, and I was like, holy cow, and then I wonder if maybe the family got a few phone calls or the kid got a few warnings. I've actually talked to a couple of kids, to try to encourage proper behavior, but I wonder if at some point they kind of start figuring it out a little bit. I don't know. It does seem like more public education is going to be helpful.
I see you want to move on.
Yeah, we need to move. Yeah,
And this kind of comes to one of my last points that I wanted to kind of touch on, is as we're moving forward in development and everything, and you're talking about public awareness, and we're talking about getting people to know and understand. I think a lot of people who, and I'm just gonna put this towards street standards. I think a lot of people who are riding these micromobility, they see a bike lane, and so they think bicycles. They don't think micromobility. So, and I know it sounds really minor, but public perception is a huge thing. If we start rebranding it as either micromobility or alternative, I'm not sure what you would call it, but instead of calling it a bike lane, call it a multi-use lane or something like that. I mean, just to kind of throw that out. So as we're like building new roads, because how many new roads a year do we build in the city? We can put that in as a standard of, okay, you have to have the road, and now you have to have a multi-use micromobility lane alongside with the sidewalk. And I think that might change public perception enough that people will be more compliant with some of the laws out there.
Area plan.
The way this was going to go down is that we were going to walk through these areas together. That's totally fine. This was a really important discussion. The way it's going to go down now is that I will do 1 or 2 of the areas with you, and I will orient you to the rest of the packet, and then give you maybe a week, 2 weeks to email in any comments that you have, and let you work. This is a really important conversation that is very relevant to these discussions. But just know you'll be doing a little bit more homework on your own and less group work together, which is totally fine. So all of these, obviously, first disclaimer statement are in draft form. These are for the station area plans that the state required a couple of years ago. We've been working on them hard for a couple of years with our technical advisory committee. We've gotten lots of public input, ran a huge public survey campaign that got something like 700 responses. It's great. We are at the point where we are aggregating all of that work into maps. That was finished last year, and now we're finalizing the maps and taking them to different bodies that are experts to weigh in on them. There are future land use maps, other things like that, that I won't bring here for you guys. I just really want your expert opinion on these transportation maps. So obviously, these are going to be, part of larger context, but I'm kind of splicing this out for you. For the Planning Commission here, counselors, these are not the maps you're going to be seeing in the March meeting. That will be the future land use maps, but they will overlay with these, just so you know. All right. For the station areas, the state is requiring us to plan for a 1/4 mile radius around UVX stations and 1/2 mile around Frontrunner. Stations without these colored circles don't require station area plans. Don't worry about the reason why. It has to do with the kind of station they have, but these are the ones that we have to plan for. The state is requiring us, and I don't need to explain to you guys the importance of these areas. Provo was already looking at plans for these areas before the state came in. These are critical pieces of infrastructure, especially as we're continuing to add to our population. I get it, everyone wants to live in Provo. And these are being required statewide, anyone with this level of infrastructure with something like UVX or Frontrunner, so all along the Wasatch Front. For state objectives for all of the plans are for housing, environment, transportation, and opportunities. These are verbatim from state code, the points we have to address. And here's how Provo is interpreting that. The state has said, you're welcome to interpret it how you want or focus on an element of this, just make it transparent. Tell us how you're looking at this and tell us how what you're planning for accomplishes these goals. So all 4 of these goals should be addressed in the transportation, specifically a transportation goal, and solidifying networks so they function independently and together to address connectivity challenge, and also environment. Reduce dependence on single occupancy vehicles by establishing or enhancing alternative transportation networks. Again, not reducing, we're not getting rid of cars, but just as we get more diverse means for people to get around, the more cars we can get off the road, the easier traffic flow becomes for those who do have to drive. So that's kind of the lens we're using to look at all of these. Just zoom out just a teeny bit. Plan overview. That was too far. Here's ridership data for the stations. I'm not going to focus on that. Here are general improvements we're suggesting for each of the stations as you're seeing these kind of terms throughout. Know that stuff at the beginning of the packet. The stations we have to do are 2230 North, the Joaquin station, the 3 along University Avenue, or the 4 along University Avenue, and
We've grouped them because of geographic overlap into 4 areas. You can see from the colors. University Avenue at one point was referred to as the Center Street station. That seemed off to us because they run along University Avenue. So if you see something like Center Street or Center Street / University Avenue, know that those are interchangeable. The final version is going to be University Avenue, but you're getting layers of drafts. You will note these documents are also formatted differently as I'm pulling from different levels of our planning process. 2230 North. We've usually started north and worked down. The north is the simplest. The south is the least or the most complex. So I'll start with the simple one just as a, while we're together to kind of familiarize you. This is our future transportation map. Every line that is solid, like this dark blue here, is an existing structure. The dots are suggested for the future one. So in this area, this is the Walmart, here's that River's Edge development. There's the Provo River Trail running along on University Parkway. And there's the EVX station. Yeah, so this is the College Connector Trail. You can see it zigzags along by the river, and this is the one that goes all the way into Orem. That is currently the only active transportation as a designated route in this area. We are proposing sharrows along Riverside and continuing up as it becomes 2230 North, bring in some connectivity to this station. These are popular cycling routes that connect over to University Avenue. It goes past several BYU housing areas. It also goes past the UCAS, is right over here. They're very popular for students. This is that Carterville Trail where people take an undevelopably is not a word, but I'm making it one. You're witnessing the birth of a moment here. Anyway, it's too steep to develop. So people have made it a de facto trail, even though it's not official. Our parks team is aware of it. As Public Works, it's difficult. It's going to be difficult to make it formalized because it would have to be ADA compliant, and the slope is really steep. We'd have to get a lot of switchbacks. But eventually, we would like a formalized trail coming down here behind the Walmart.
Everything has to be ADA compliant. I mean, like you see stairs in California going up steep things. They're not.
They're older than ADA.
Mm-hmm. We're going to have an alternative that if this proves to be too steep to develop, Vern has pitched the idea that we could get something on the longer slope coming down here. So we'll provide that as an alternate text in the plan. Technically, as the plan area, this would, I think, be better. It's what residents are already using.
There's not exemptions for, like,
not really, because then people could say, well, it was too hard, so we didn't try. So they just hold everyone to a really high standard.
We could save a lot of money
like
if we claimed the exemption.
Yeah, there's a certain slope grade. I don't know what the percent is off the top of my head. We'd also have to add lighting and things like that. So it'd be an expensive upgrade, but it's an upgrade that we have been aware of for several years. That is on the city's radar. If we could add some sort of link in here, even if it's just, you know, lighting, something to signify that this is a safe area to walk. A lot of people are walking up and through the parking lot here to try to get out to the station. I was with the BYU group. We had to time ourselves going different paces, carrying different things. It took us between 7 and 12 minutes to get from here to the station. It is a very commonly walked route. It is very difficult for people to make it there in any kind of time. Also, like 3 or 4 of the minutes was just the stoplight here.
But the link is sort of to be determined, like what can we come up with still? The blue line?
We don't have any like formalized design for it, just that some signifier for pedestrians that this is a clear walkway, keeping this clear for them would be a safer, easier way for them than having them roam free through the parking lot. And then on Carterville Road, there have long been plans for a bike lane. It's very narrow up there. We're keeping the Transportation Master Plan's recommendation for a bike lane. We share all of Vern's concerns about the narrowness and high speed of the road, though, so we'll see as that develops if that continues to be a bike lane and becomes something. You will see this kind of setup in the other plans. You see these others, see description and plans. These are always under other improvement recommendations. In some cases, I've spliced them as a separate document. In some cases, they're in with images. In this area, there's also alternate concepts for a pedestrian bridge or tunnel going over University Parkway to the station here. Lots of pros. They're much safer. They reduce wait time. Cons, it's just very expensive. But we're putting it in as something so that if grant funding or something becomes available, we can say, hey, look, we've got something in a plan. It can be justification for staff. These are alternate concepts, not our number one top priority concept. Note we're using that word very liberally. So don't worry about that. We are aware cost is a little expensive. I've also included at the end, this is just kind of orienting you to how the others are going to look so that you can navigate this on your own smoothly. Every document has the stations. This is a very vague conceptual rendering. We used the watercolor to show just how vague it was. The consultant did that for us. Our future plans, these are the existing arterials, connectors, minor arterials, everything you might want to know. And then here are our specific goals. You might have to rotate it on your home document. There was no way this table was going to fit portrait. It is what it is. But looking at our specific design standards, parking, and transportation goals for the areas before moving on to the next. A side note with Joaquin, I love the idea of this windy switchback path. I know people are just going to bike right through, so we'll make sure whatever it looks like is in concept with developers. Don't worry about these watercolors. They're very vague. You don't need to put your comments on those. That's fine. Focus on the core of it. I think that's about all the time that I've got. And would you send out my email address when you send the packet? Sure. And if you can just get me your email or your input in the next 2 weeks on the remaining 3 station areas, that would be really helpful.
What kinds of feedback are you most looking
Any feedback you have on the specific design standards is helpful, but one of our goals is to create and implement design standards. So I can come back to you with that later. Get to that if you have time. The most important part is, are these routes right? Do they meet what you see as the needs of Provo's commuting population, including visitors? We do get a lot of visitors in all of these areas, especially as they're brought in by transit. I don't want to take too much more of your time because I don't want to go over. But do you have any questions about the plan's objectives, the maps that I'm showing you? They'll be emailed to you today. Anything else?
What's the process for this? So you're presenting it to the council in March, is that what I understand?
I'm presenting the future land use maps to the council in March, just a work session just to make sure that we're building on the right kind of maps and foundations as we're expanding the text. These have to be approved by the state by the end of the year.
By the state.
By the state. Specifically for us, it's going to be MAG and UTA. We, in order to hit the deadlines for those end of year with all the review and stuff, have to submit these plans pre-approved by council by August 4th. So the final plans will be coming in their full entirety to Planning Commission in May and June, and council in June and July. The council gets to give approval as to form, which is something we almost never do, basically saying that this is final, the council will not make any changes, but it still needs to be approved by another agency before it's actually law. Then what is approved as to form by the council will go to MAG and UTA. That will be reviewed and approved. We will have a hearing. They will give us, here's some edits or green light. Once it's green lit, we take it back to council for final adoption. At that point, the council is not allowed to make changes. Their time for changes would be approval as to form. If the council, they are, but then we have to take it back through the approval process through the state if they make any changes or reject it, which we can do, but we will then be out of compliance with the end of year deadline. And we don't know what the consequences are for that yet. We'll find out if we get there. A fun thing to note that doesn't come up in this part of the future land or the transportation map, but does give you maybe some context for the seriousness with which the state is approaching this. With all of the future land use maps, council, this will be explained to you in the March meeting as well. With our end of year approval, our on the ground zoning has to match what is in our future land use maps. So anything that is approved in the future land use maps, once greenlit, approved as to form, reviewed by the state, adopted by council, we then have to bring a bunch of rezones to make sure that our zoning matches what is in our future land use map. That is not something we do. In every other plan, it is purely a guiding strategic document. There's no legal binding to it. These plans are different, just for the state. So don't worry about those too much. We'll give you all the info you need from March. But just context again for how serious
These are
the
important.
state is.
Committing us to zoning
So glad
changes.
that
If you're not in compliance with these,
local government.
We don't know.
like, what does it, is the state holding us as a carrot in order to get grants? Or is this just, like, what is the end game
They
for the
haven't
state?
said yet. The last time they did anything like this was with moderate income housing plans, and if you didn't have those approved with the requisite goals on time, you were not in the first approval round for transportation funding until you became compliant. So you were in any B tier or anything that got left over, you could get. I don't know if they're going to take a similar approach with this. I haven't heard anything concrete. Everyone's at about the same pace we are. Lehigh has approved one plan for one station area, but still has others to go. Everybody else in Ogden, Salt Lake, and Utah counties is trying to get this in the fall like we are. But we are already the first on the agenda for the review slot for the August, September, so we're good. We've got our spot in. We just have to make sure we hit the deadline. We have been working closely with MAG and UTA. We have had reps from MAG at every step of the way. UTA has been on our review boards for our technical advisory committee. We've met with them roughly monthly, at very least quarterly. They like what's in the plans. We've worked with them. This is done in concert with them. They've said that as long as we don't throw any curveballs at the last minute, American Fork's plan was to move the primary station. So as long as we don't throw any big curveballs like that, then they don't see anything in these flags that raises any concerns to the approval process. We should be okay. We just need to make sure our ducks are in a row, and you guys are kind of the final advisory check before this goes to council. Are these transportation plans something that TMAC would feel comfortable recommending and endorsing to council? If not, what changes or additional information would you need to be able to get it to that point?
So I just have a quick, so this is focusing on transportation of the area, but it also sounds like it's focusing on possible redevelopment because you have to change housing and land use.
There's a transportation element, but it is going to be a full plan. Each of these will have a full, like a neighborhood plan, but just for a smaller area.
So this is just, and I know
Yeah, you're good.
I apologize, but if this plan goes through and gets approved and all of this gets rezoned, and in 10 years, we say, nope, this isn't what we want to do, and something better's come along, are we still stuck with this?
I have given this some thought. Looking at the state code, we do have to have the rezones in by the end of the year. There is nothing saying come January 1st, we can't rezone it all back. I think we'd get in big trouble, but it's not technically illegal. So I'm not planning on doing that, and I didn't just say that in a recorded meeting. It's fine.
For it.
No, everyone has found that loophole. It's not just me. But the advantage is that we then have leverage for a rezone. If someone else wants to come in and they have a really good, compelling concept that would be great for the area, but isn't what fits the zone, then we go through the normal process where we have
to rezone it back.
We have negotiating leverage of the rezone for them to have to prove to us why this is a good concept for the area. So it still gives us negotiating leverage in a future rezone to change the zone map for their proposal, just like every other rezone.
And has this gone through the neighborhood, because there's, like Joaquin and everything, they have very specific neighborhood plans.
We took we did build on the neighborhood plans for all of these, Joaquin, Mazer, some of the areas didn't have them, but downtown Joaquin and Mazer plans, we definitely built on. We built on existing transportation master plans, everything else. We had an open house for the future land use map that was pushed out specifically to districts 4 and 5. All of these are in 4 and 5. On Tuesday, it was pretty well attended. People were really excited marking up the maps. Again, that was for land use, not so much transportation.
I know this is the final piece, but I'm just like, that's huge.
Yeah.
Like, that is, you are changing the face of the city.
But we get to say what we're changing it to.
Yeah,
Right.
we do get to say.
Like, no one's telling us that we have to change it to something that we don't want it to be.
Yeah.
The only things we're being told is that there are elements we have to have, but we're allowed to decide how we meet them in every case. But once we commit to it, we can't say this was a wishy-washy, we did it because the state made us, but we're never going to actually do it. They're making us actually walk the talk and do what we say we're going to do. But we get to decide what that is. But yes, this has gone through some pretty good public review as well.
This is a big deal. TMAC, let's do our homework and actually look at these since we don't have enough time today, and let Hannah know Greg's been on the committee the whole time, looking at these last 2 years. Thanks to Greg for taking
I'm pretty
that.
happy with it in general.
Okay,
Is my
good to know.
overall,
But let's-
overall endorsement.
Let's look
Please
at
look at
it,
it.
take it seriously, and give them good feedback.
So should we say March 6th? That's 2
Is that
weeks
2
from
weeks?
today?
That would be great. If this does need to come back to the next March meeting, we do have time for it. That'll be at the tail end of our drafting process. I'll be presenting at a conference out of town, so I can't come, but I can send someone else from my team if this does need to come back to the next meeting. I'm optimistic we can get everything we need from email, so.
I would recommend that we vote on it in some fashion
Mhm.
at the March meeting,
Mhm.
even if it's not helpful, but I think it would be good to sort of put a stamp on it. So maybe give comments to Hannah in the next 2 weeks, but also be prepared to discuss and vote on it in fashion.
That works. Comments in the next 2 weeks. I'll spend the next 2 weeks after that integrating the changes. I'll let you know what does and doesn't change from those, and another member of my team will be here to present it for a vote.
I have a question on that. Would the TMAC committee feel more inclined to vote on the transportation element or the entirety of the plans?
Well, we won't have the entirety of the plan.
Okay,
ready.
so it's just the transportation element. Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much to our presenters. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Question. Yeah. So the lead one would be only for that quarter. What is your?
Yeah, I think right there. Yeah, you're on the ground. So our traffic team does spend a lot of time working on this issue. Our school resource officers will do a lot, especially since a lot of those need dirt bikes. They tend to be high school age. As long as they're legally registered licensed.
Yes.
In our community oriented policing division, we spend a lot of time out on that.
Sure what the decision was on.
There are 3 divisions that work on it. There's smaller divisions, there's 3 officers, 4 officers. But yeah, we do focus on some of those things. Traffic.
I got a couple of.